All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to tackle one of the toughest, most challenging questions in the entire Bible, and we're drawing our insights straight from the book of Joshua. We're going to explore this deep, deep tension that sits right at the heart of the scriptures.
And this really is the question, isn't it? It's something anyone who has spent time reading the Old Testament has probably wrestled with. How in the world do you square the idea of a loving, merciful God with a God who also commands what look like incredibly aggressive military campaigns? It's a question that, honestly, it deserves a really careful look.
And you can see the tension laid out perfectly right here. On one side, you have the scripture defining God's own character, merciful, gracious, slow to anger. But on the other side, especially in a book like Joshua, you get these direct, unambiguous commands for war. The text doesn't hide this. It puts these two ideas right next to each other, almost forcing us to ask, how can both of these be true?
So to even begin to understand this, our source material sends us right into the thick of it, the book of Joshua, because it's right here that this idea of a warlike God is presented in its most direct and, let's be honest, its most challenging form.
Now, what's so powerful here is that God's involvement in all this isn't some minor detail you could miss. It is everywhere. The text makes it absolutely clear, from every possible angle. You hear it from God's own mouth, the narrator of the story asserts it, the leader, Joshua, confirms it in his speeches, even outsiders like Rahab the Canaanite and the Israelite spies, they all acknowledge it. The book leaves no doubt. God is presented as the one directing this conquest.
So, if God is so involved, how do we begin to make sense of it? Well, this is where things take a really unexpected turn. The source we're looking at points us to a single critical encounter that happens just outside the walls of Jericho. And the argument is, this one scene is the key to reframing everything.
Let's just picture this for a second. The people of Israel have just crossed the Jordan River. Their first big challenge is looming right in front of them, the massive, fortified city of Jericho. And as Joshua, their leader, is scoping things out, suddenly he's face to face with this mysterious man holding a drawn sword. You can just feel the tension in that moment.
So Joshua does what any general would do. He asks a very practical, very human question. He sees the world in two camps, us and them. You're either on my team or you're on their team. He thinks this is a simple conflict between two earthly armies, Israel and Canaan.
And the answer he gets just completely blows up his whole understanding of the situation. No, just that one word. It's such a profound rejection of Joshua's entire point of view. This mysterious visitor is refusing to be put in one of Joshua's neat little boxes.
And then he reveals who he really is. He says he's not here to pick a side in a human fight. No, he is the commander of a totally different army, the army of the Lord. And that changes everything. The crucial question is no longer, is God on Joshua's side? The real question is Joshua on his side?
Now, our source material provides a very specific theological take on who this commander is. It identifies him as the pre-incarnate Christ. Let's just pause on that. This means Joshua isn't just meeting some powerful angel who's come to help him win a battle. He's being told right then and there that his fight on earth is just one tiny piece of a much, much larger cosmic war being fought by an unseen army.
So that one encounter is like a camera suddenly zooming out. It forces us to look beyond the dusty battlefields of Canaan and see the vast cosmic stage where all these events are actually taking place.
So where did this all start? Well, drawing from passages in Isaiah, Ezekiel, and Revelation, the source explains what it calls the Great Controversy. It's a story that begins in heaven, with Lucifer, the highest and most powerful of all the angels. But out of pride, he rebelled against God. And this wasn't just a disagreement, it sparked an actual war in heaven. And according to this view, that heavenly conflict eventually spilled over and was transferred right here to our world.
So what this means is that the Great Controversy isn't just some ancient backstory. It's the meta-narrative. It's the big, overarching story that gives meaning to all the little stories. Every human conflict, every battle between good and evil down here on Earth is seen as just an echo, a reflection of that much larger spiritual war.
Okay, that's a huge cosmic idea. But how does it connect back to the very real, very brutal, very bloody wars we read about in the Old Testament? Let's connect those dots.
This is the key idea. The source defines these divinely sanctioned wars as earthly fronts in that great conflict. They aren't really about gaining territory or conquering people.
In this view, their ultimate purpose is to confront evil head-on and begin to restore God's justice and love in a world that has fallen. And this verse from Exodus is a perfect example. Notice what God says. His judgment isn't just against Pharaoh or the Egyptian army. It's against all the gods of Egypt. This suggests that the real target was never just human. It was the rebellious spiritual powers, the demonic forces, that were propping up that whole oppressive system.
Okay, this brings us to the hardest part of all, the command for the total destruction of the Canaanites. Our source material says we have to see this not as a simple military act, but as a kind of preview of the final judgment. From this perspective, the war wasn't really against a group of people, but against a deeply ingrained system of sin and evil that had gone too far. In this cosmic war, where God's very character is being challenged, the text suggests there is no middle ground, no neutrality.
But wait, there's one more crucial piece to this puzzle that we absolutely have to talk about. The source makes a really important distinction between what God's ideal plan was and what became necessary because of human choices and human failure.
And you can see the two models right here. God's ideal plan, his plan A, is what we see at the Red Sea. He tells the people, you just need to be still. I will fight for you. But the source argues that after their constant unbelief and complaining in the desert, they ended up with a second-best option. Their own participation in the war became a necessary consequence of their lack of faith.
And this isn't just a new idea. The source points to this quote from Ellen G. White, which says it directly. It states that if Israel had simply trusted God, they never would have had to fight their enemies in the first place to enter the Promised Land.
So when you put it all together, what's the big takeaway? It's this. The battles you read about in the Bible are not meant to be a blueprint or a model for human warfare today. Not at all. Instead, they are presented as unique, specific episodes in a much larger, cosmic struggle between good and evil for the very soul of the universe.
And that brings us to the final, challenging question that the source leaves us with. Because if this cosmic conflict is real, and if there really is no neutral ground, then this whole thing stops being an ancient theological puzzle, and it becomes a deeply personal question for every one of us. How do you know which side you are really on?